Hello everyone, welcome to yet another day in this, the clown decade. The decade where things are only going to get worse before they get better. And today things are getting worse because we have a law that is pretty terrible, and now, as you will see, pretty much everyone agrees it's terrible, but they want this terrible law only to apply to terrible people. What the hell do I mean by that? Well, Channel 4 put out a video yesterday, a snippet of one of their investigations asking, are racial hate speech laws being weaponised? And obviously this thumbnail only covers part of the question because the full question is being weaponised against ethnic minorities. Now, typically a law of journalism is that if a question has to be asked, the answer is almost always no. However, it is pretty amazing that this question was asked in the first place, given that plenty of people have been taken to court and prosecuted for racial hate speech while being white. So this appears to actually be a law that is applied fairly, but because some ethnic minorities have the law applied to them, apparently that's weaponising it. Anyway, let's actually have a look at what their segment has to say.
There is institutional racism in the police.
I mean, already this is pretty poor journalism and pretty much exactly what I expect from Channel 4. Again, while going through this, you have to bear in mind that Channel 4 is entirely government-owned, and so technically everyone should have a say in how Channel 4 is run, and this is just already poisoning the well. Yes, there is no doubt that the Met Police absolutely have issues within their ranks. However, there is a clear implication being put forward here in that the police are institutionally racist, therefore any law that they are applying is probably going to be racist, and that's exactly what already Channel 4 are trying to imply here. Remember Stephen Lawrence? Police didn't do a very good job investigating his murder. Remember the race riots that we've had in the past? Well, that's because of racist policing. Obviously, they're still racist now. That is the implication here, and it's exactly what I expect from dirty, dirty smear merchants.
Detain you for 23 as well.
For half a century, the relationship between ethnic minorities and the police has been a source of concern.
Okay, it's pretty interesting that most of the clips you had to use were from 20 years ago or so. Even stranger is that when you get to more modern clips, you actually have them arresting a white guy as part of your aren't they racist montage. And then, yeah, some of the clips appear to be from the 2011 riots, which all stem from the shooting of Mark Duggan, who was a criminal who was armed at the time of his shooting and trying to run away from the police while armed. Again, all the implication here is that all these people didn't do, they didn't do anything. They're innocent people, and people are less and less convinced of that argument these days. Especially in Britain, where firearms officers are barely called out, and then when they are, pretty much from every news story I've seen of them, they're very reluctant to discharge their firearm, and when they do, there is typically very good reason for it. In other words, we do not have the same issue with police shootings that they have over in America, which again are completely overstated in terms of the problems they have. I completely understand that Channel 4 is trying to poison the well here. I just didn't think they'd be this dishonest about it.
When the country's biggest police force was first declared institutionally racist in 1999, the recruitment of black and Asian officers was championed as a solution.
Yep, and the Met Police apparently still have massive issues and is still massively institutionally racist, as even the police chief commissioners say. So how all these heads of the police are constantly saying, yes, I oversee a racist institution and keep their jobs, I have no idea. It's almost like they don't really believe it.
Today, the chair of Britain's National Black Police Association says not only are the expertise of black and Asian officers being sidelined, he warns that policing is being politicised by culture wars. And now the laws introduced to protect minorities are in danger of being disproportionately used to prosecute them for intra-racial disputes.
This is absolutely typical. Consistently and completely support laws that we should never have on the statute books in the first place, but they put in to effectively try and make protected classes. Once those protected classes are established, prosecute a load of people for infringing said law, but then when that law is applied to non-white people, all of a sudden, it's being weaponised against racial minorities. Apparently these laws that are there clearly from leftist activists pushing for it, these hate speech laws, apparently they've actually been put in by white nationalists, specifically to arrest racial minorities. I said it earlier today in a tweet, but I'm actually astounded at how accurate George Orwell was with just how accepting people are of a completely different narrative than what they heard 5 minutes ago. Memory holding is a completely real thing, and this entire news segment is absolute proof of that.
Well, a lot of it is, if policing is accused of being institutionally racist by communities of colour, then the big pushback is, well, it's your communities that are giving most police officers the racism.
I don't think I've ever heard that pushback in my life. Certainly not on the mainstream news, certainly never in something like Question Time, certainly never in a panel show. As I showed before, what seems to happen with police commissioners and heads of police is that when they are told you are institutionally racist and oversee an institution that is racist, the typical reply is yeah. They just say yeah. I don't see pushback against this. I don't know what he's talking about.
I think there's this disconnect between what our experiences are, how we experience racism, and how policing understands racism. And I think it's almost used as a public relations piece, pushback against communities and against the notion that policing has a race problem.
But again, I've never seen it published in a newspaper. I have never, ever heard of a police commissioner ever saying that actually the problem is the communities themselves where these officers come from. Because I know it's a thing in America where, in the black community, say, if a kid wants to become a cop, that is definitely ostracised. And I imagine that happens over here to a much lesser extent, but certainly not to the point where it has ever got to mainstream sources. Again, I don't know what he's talking about. I think this guy just makes stuff up for a living.
This year has seen high-profile cases of ethnic minorities investigated or prosecuted over their language when discussing race or criticising politicians.
Yeah, we've also had high-profile cases of white people being prosecuted for hate speech. Yet the law came in, it's being applied. Apparently it's being applied relatively fairly. Is this a problem? If that's a problem, I'm afraid Britain isn't the country for you.
This is Kojo, a successful executive who would only discuss his case anonymously. He responded to a Conservative candidate's critical tweet of Marcus Rashford. A friend tweeted the politician with this emoji and expletives. In response, Kojo posted, "I just clocked. This is a black man who tweeted that, Lord above, with black in speech marks." When his friend said the politician was tap dancing for Massa, Kojo replied with a Daffy Duck gif like this.
Yeah, it's absolutely crazy, isn't it? It's absolutely crazy what powers the police have been given when it comes to things being said on Twitter. It's almost like, I don't know, free speech extremists have been warning about this for, decades at this point? Ages. Did Channel 4 come and interview Count Dankula asking how ridiculous that was? Did they? Heck. That's when the law was actually a good thing. But now, a black guy's effectively called another black guy an Uncle Tom. Oh no, can't have that being investigated. That would be institutionally racist.
And almost a year to the day of that exchange online, I was then contacted by the police. I was then interviewed twice by the police under caution.
Yeah, hate speech laws are absolutely mental, aren't they? I would also like to point out that this is not hate speech law actually being applied to hate speech against white people. Because if he is this open about hate speech against black people, there is no doubt in my mind that he will have said similar things and worse about white politicians. Do I think he should be arrested for any of this? No, absolutely not. But I would like to point out that yes, while this law apparently is actually being applied to people no matter the race, it's only being applied, obviously, when it's an ethnic minority whom the hate speech is being levelled against. Yet there seems to be absolutely no acknowledgement of this. No white person has been involved in this news segment at all yet. And what we're being told is that, it's a white versus everyone else issue again. Literally no white person has been brought up yet, at all. But obviously in the progressive language, this politician was probably acting white, in quotes, and that's probably what their issue is.
The implication of the conversation and the GIF is that that man was performing online for white people. Mm-hmm. Can you see why that would be offensive and to him a racist remark?
I can see where it would be offensive, but where he perceives it as racist, I find it hard to grasp and conceptualize.
I can see why it would be offensive, but I can't see why it would be racist. It has to be one of the craziest things to say in that conversation. This black man is acting as a slave to the white man. Why is that a racist thing to say? I don't know. I don't get it. I can't conceptualize it. And this is the main point I want to get across. This guy thinks the law is okay. He just doesn't think it should be applied to him. Stated preference versus revealed preference. He reveals that he doesn't want this law to exist. He is stating that he does. These people can vote.
For me, it was a political critique of his viewpoint.
I was critiquing his politics, therefore it can't be racist is a hell of a take. I have been on the internet long enough to know all the defences for racists like this. And don't get me wrong, I have made spicy jokes online too. But I'm consistent in saying I don't think this law should be applied whatsoever. I think it should be off the statute books. You, however, are being completely dishonest in trying to say I think the law should actually apply. I just don't think it should apply to me because it was political satire. Alright, well, every joke I make is political satire. There we go, we've got the same shield now.
To have been in that situation from the result of a GIF, and a GIF that, for me, I have seen widely used, my mind is blown at that someone can feel so triggered that they want to effectively ruin somebody else's life.
Yes, but of course, if you are triggered in a similar fashion, you should be able to have the power to get the police onto someone to ruin their lives, of course. He's already practically said that, with the Weasley way he has tried to defend his blatantly racist Twitter conversation, which, again, I don't care that you were being racist. I don't care at all. It's meaningless to me, and obviously you should not have been arrested for this. However, if you agree, I don't know why you wouldn't want the laws off the statute books, unless, of course, you actually do want this law applied just to everyone but you and people you care about.
The politician Ben Obese-Jekti, who reported Kojo, has made a string of police referrals, but has so far declined to comment.
So he's reported a whole load of people to the police, and there is no doubt in my mind that there will also have been white people investigated by this law. A string of accusations were made, he made police reports. Why would you not go further and investigate more people affected by this law? I reckon they did, and I reckon they're not telling us about the white people affected by this as well. Because this is just clear narrative construction, and the foundations are so weak, I'm amazed if anyone would take it seriously.
Why does there seem to be a rise in prosecutions, charges, investigations of minorities criticising other minorities?
Oh, the language. It is so weaselly. This is devastating for Channel 4 News, honestly. Why are there so many prosecutions of ethnic minorities just criticising other ethnic minorities? It's amazing, isn't it? Why don't white people don't get this shield? This is absolutely incredible. Again, not a single white person has been brought up at all in this entire news segment, and they have made it a white versus everyone else issue. It's absolutely amazing.
I think the increase is probably due to the external environment and the kind of polarised communities that we see ourselves in at the minute. I think policing needs to make sure that we don't get caught up in anything like a culture war. We make sure that we stay impartial.
Says the president of the National Black Police Association. But again, it's absolutely amazing, isn't it? Why are so many ethnic minorities being arrested for this? Probably because they're not aware that this law can actually apply to them. The thing is that people that are hyper aware of this, right-wing circles with a lot of white people in them, are quite aware about this, and an awful lot of the smarter ones won't even bother replying to any politician or anyone of note on Twitter with anything remotely racialising, because they know it will land them in hot water, whereas obviously a lot of other people who are not in those right-wing circles, more on the left-wing circles, won't have that filter, frankly because they've been so used to having no consequences for any of that, legal consequences I should specify, which there shouldn't be, that they don't bother applying the filter, and now they're being caught out for it. And I don't have sympathy because they want the law. If you want the law in place, deal with the consequences.
Few events have been more polarising than the war in Gaza.
Oh, again, a lovely handcrafted 6-minute segment. You have hundreds of videos of way more explicitly anti-Semitic signs out there. Plenty of signs with people with the parachute men on them. Plenty of signs with an Israeli flag, comparing it to a Nazi flag. And you just happen to only choose pictures with the most mundane and peace-loving signage known to man, which obviously, yes, these do exist, and these have been at some of the Palestine marches. But ignoring the fact there's been open and blatant anti-Semitism at these marches, again, just purely dishonest. Filthy, filthy smear merchants.
With millions taking to the streets in protests that have been heavily policed due to concern over slogans and chants.
I mean, yeah, some of them have been pretty bad.
Our day will come, but we must normalize massacres as the status quo.
Yeah, that was just openly said on a podium in London. As far as I'm aware, the guy is literally still free. He hasn't been arrested for that. That goes beyond hate speech, by the way. That's just an open call to violence. That is the sort of thing people should actually be arrested for, and he's just free. And he's an ethnic minority.
Last year, teacher Mariha Hussein lost her job after she was pictured at the protest holding a placard depicting Rishi Sunak and Suella Braverman at the bottom of a coconut tree.
Again, the wording. Oh, they're just at the bottom of a coconut tree. Yeah, the implication that I don't know why you don't just say that. Well, I do know why you don't just say this. But yeah, the implication is that, you know, they're coconuts. Which, again, is a completely common racial slur. And if the whole point of this law was to stop racial slurs, why are you shocked that people are arrested for openly stating, either through text or through signage or even through their own voices, racial slurs in public?
She is now the subject of a police investigation into whether she committed a hate crime.
By the definition of the law, yes, she has committed a hate crime. Why is this shocking? Oh my god, common law where the law is applied to everyone is being applied to everyone. That wasn't supposed to happen.
But do you now accept that some people today would find the placard to be offensive?
I think that although some language and statements may be pejorative, it doesn't make it racist.
Oh, great. It's another shield I can use. No, officer. I wasn't being racist. I was just being pejorative. It might be based on their skin colour, but that's not racist.
Coconuts. Brown on the outside, white supremacist values on the inside.
Again, I'd like to point out at this point, no white person has actually been brought up at all in this segment. None at all. All that's been brought up is white supremacist values, whatever the hell that means. You know what, it's good that you're not a teacher, because there is absolutely no way that I would be happy with you teaching my kids.
But Rishi Sunak and Suella Braverman would be offended by that. They would say that they are not white supremacists and they do not share any values whatsoever with those kinds of people. There are some experts who might say they find the placard to be, racially inappropriate, even racist.
What a world we live in. What is this line of questioning? Oh, Sunak and Braverman, neither of them would agree that they're white supremacists. Yeah, okay, sure. Oh, therefore they find this racist? Yeah, sure. Oh, by the way, did you know that experts would say that this is racially aggravating and probably racist as well? Channel 4 have got the racism experts in to let us know that the term coconut is a racist term. Absolutely incredible scenes. I mean, thank God Channel 4 gets absolutely no public funding, but honestly, as I say, the government is in control of Channel 4. Why can't they improve the quality of Channel 4 if they own it? Absolutely amazing they're just letting it go to waste.
Some of the things that Suella Braverman at the time, the Home Secretary at the time, was saying was so inflammatory, and it was racist.
I'd love for her to bring up examples, but Channel 4 really can't be bothered with any of it or go along the line of questioning of what exactly did she say was racist. That honestly, things like this can just be ignored. Again, this is all just her rationalising her feelings. She hates Tories for one reason or another. Why exactly doesn't really matter, you just need to know that she hates them, and therefore will say any old nonsense and accuse them of any old nonsense to defend her actions, because in her mind, all that has happened is, I hate these people, I have insulted these people, I am now being oppressed by these people, and that justifies absolutely everything I've done.
I remember so clearly was when she said that grooming gangs were predominantly Pakistani men.
Oh my goodness, never mind, she actually has brought up an example. Yes, Suella Braverman did indeed say that almost all grooming gang cases were perpetrated by Pakistani men. This is technically incorrect, and instead what she should have said is that almost all high-profile cases of grooming gangs were done by Pakistani men, but out of all grooming gang criminal cases, they do not even make up the majority. Instead, Pakistani men are overrepresented in the crime statistics for grooming gangs. So yes, her wording was pretty atrocious, and in the Daily Mail article, that has actually been amended now. However, I guess that's a good enough reason to call her racial slurs on a sign.
Being of Pakistani origin and having a Pakistani doctor as a father, this is a government that what we're growing up in, my children are growing up in, extremely inflammatory.
And what, your answer was to teach your kids and teach the kids that you are teaching that the way you should respond to that is by being inflammatory back? Right, okay, that makes sense. I don't like this racial inflammatory tone that she is setting. I'm going to make it worse.
The reason I was there at that protest in the first place, their complicity in a genocide taking place in Palestine.
I mean, the interview is not going to get into Israel-Palestine, but yes, once again, no, there is not a genocide going on in Palestine, and I'm fed up of hearing that. Urban warfare is going to end up with a lot of collateral damage. There's no way to avoid it. Especially when Hamas are, using human shields.
All of it, the Rwanda policy, these are policies, rhetorics that are racist.
Oh my god, the Rwanda policy. You're not just sent to Rwanda for being black or brown or whatever. You're sent to Rwanda for coming over to the country illegally and failing the asylum process. Goodness me, but whatever. She thinks everything's racist. Carry on.
Coconuts is a political critique. It's about actions.
Oh, great. Well, again, another shield. Nothing that Suella Braverman said or any of the politicians you were criticising said was racist because it's actually a political critique. Great. I love playing this game. Give me a shield and I will use it. No, you don't understand, officer. I wasn't being racist about Diane Abbott. I was just putting forward a political critique that she's got a very low IQ. And I'm not going to let that joke carry on because I'm genuinely scared I could get arrested.
I think, again, a lot of it's around context, but I don't think the word coconut in itself is, it should be seen in the same way as the N-word.
Nobody's saying it should be, but it certainly is a racial slur. It's amazing. Yeah, sure, not all racial slurs are on the same level. Not all of them have the same severity. Still hate speech, it's still breaking the law. A law that, once again, I note, you aren't saying is a bad thing. Again, all these people want is for that law to only apply to white people or people they don't like. That is it. That is as deep as this goes, and Channel 4 is happily giving them cover and not challenging them on any of it.
Few face more racial slurs than racial minorities in politics.
Well, yeah, but that's because an awful lot of anti-white speech isn't considered racist. The word gammon absolutely is a racial slur, but saying that's really cringe. But all it takes for a slur or pejorative to be racist is to have race as a factor as part of the insult. Gammon is absolutely bringing race into it, as it only applies to white people. You necessarily have to be white for that insult to apply. Therefore it's a racial slur. But obviously, whatever official statistics you're using won't accept that. Because everything has to be about the narrative that all racial minorities are oppressed and all white people are the oppressors, despite the fact that it is perfectly legal to put out job offers and say white people need not apply. I say it all the time, I couldn't get a job at the BBC because I'm white. And that is completely covered by the Equality Act. Again, no white person has been brought up at all until now, and it's just to say that, oh, you can't be racist towards them. Absolutely amazing.
This year, comments emerged by the Conservative Party's biggest donor, Frank Hester, about Diane Abbott. He said the MP made him hate all black women and that he felt she should be shot.
Yeah, what's wrong with that? It's political critique. I mean, don't get me wrong, I understand why Diane Abbott would find it offensive, but why would she find it racist? I just don't get it. You see, it's amazing how these word games only work in one direction. Oh, and just to make it absolutely clear, when the BBC was reporting on this, they had not heard the recording, or were they able to actually independently verify that the alleged remarks were even made. It is a pretty amazing thing that happens an awful lot with an awful lot of newspapers. They will report that things have been said and then never actually release the recordings. And given that everyone here should know my opinion on The Guardian, I am not taking them at their word, though I will say this would be quite a wild thing to lie about. And to be fair, no one actually denied that these remarks weren't made. The defence that came out was that they are taken out of context. And ultimately, I don't really care. As I say, I don't think any of this should ever be an issue for the law, but it is, and that's why I have to comment on it, because it's an absolutely ridiculous law that everyone is agreeing is ridiculous, but leftists want it only applied to their enemies. And so that's why we have it, because the left are constantly winning.
Yet government ministers said the episode should be forgiven, as focus shifts to the abuse of politicians by their own community.
Again, the narrative's just being made here. No, they were saying nobody cares because it was comments made in private that are obviously hyperbolic, and that, there's a difference between what's said in private and what is said in public. The two examples you've been given so far were said in public. They were open about it. Mr. Hester obviously knew that this was not something that you should say in public, and said it in private, presumably to let off steam. Again, the full context of what he was saying was effectively, I try my best not to be racist, but then you get idiots like Diane Abbott out here who don't do well for the stereotype. That's effectively what he was saying. He was literally saying, I want to be a better person, but was open about his thoughts. And we're constantly told by the left, oh, we just need honest and frank conversations about this. Okay, he was being honest and frank, and now you want him kicked out of public life and never be able to get involved in politics again. Yeah, I'm sure that's what you want. It's the problem with the left. They constantly lie.
What's interesting being a black politician is that you get it from both ends. You're either not black enough or you're too black. And that leads to comments such as coconut, bounty. On a personal level, if you've been attacked so much, you have to say, look, enough's enough.
Yeah, that's Sean Bailey. He was Labour mayor candidate 4 years ago, I believe. He seemed pretty decent, but no massive charisma, big policy thinking politician. I was up against Khan, so I didn't get too far, but from what I saw of him, I liked him. And his comments here, I just find completely reasonable. Yes, I'm sure there are people on the right that say that you're too black. I have seen it said on Twitter. And yes, I am sure that there are also people on the left who say that you are not black enough. Again, I've seen it. And having enough of it is obviously going to come into the picture. You can, of course, just block these people on Twitter, but people seem to forget that the block button exists.
Isn't there an element of hypocrisy because your peers did not report Frank Hester to the police for the comments that he said about Diane Abbott that were condemned as racist, yet they are reporting other ethnic minorities to the authorities?
Do we even know who was at this meeting where he was saying those things? As far as I was aware, Frank Hester said these things in a company meeting. As far as I'm aware, as I say, I don't think this had anything actually to do with the Tory party. Again, this was a guilt by association thing. Oh, the Tory party take £10 billion from this guy, and he said some really unsavoury things in a company meeting once. Again, there's a difference between saying these things in private and saying them in public as well. The law only applies to public order offences. Well, and any other crime. You can't actually be arrested for saying things in private, which is what he did, which is why this is an absolutely amazing thing to say here. Oh yeah, this Tory donor of yours, he said some things in private. Isn't it hypocritical that they're not reporting things said in private to the police, but are reporting things said in public to the police? No, not really, because public order offences only apply, and Malicious Communications Act, if they're online, only apply to things said in public. Well, technically malicious communications can happen with private messaging and things like that. But again, it's different to saying something in a private boardroom.
Is it, hypocritical that I haven't reported people from the black community? And I would say no, because that's a decision for me, a very personal decision, and I understand the pressures that might cause in my community.
To be honest with you, not the worst answer, but the best answer I'd say is, to be honest, I'll just get rid of the laws anyway. I would rather he have said that, but I imagine that didn't cross his mind during this impromptu interview. And saying I will personally deem what is offensive and what is not, and what I want to report and what I don't, and whether that's hypocritical or not, it may or may not be. I don't really care. I think that's a better answer than anything the leftists so far have given, so fair enough to Sean Bailey.
In the absence of consensus, there is political tribalism, and with it, a loss of confidence. As those representing the National Black Police Association enforcing the law believe hate speech is becoming too politicised to police.
Hate speech was always going to be politicised. It came in thanks to leftists rejecting the idea of freedom of speech, and I'd no Tory rebuttal or Make Me American is going to be in the comments saying, we've never had freedom of speech though. Yes, I know, but when it came to the conversations we are having now, they were always free. The only time Oswald Mosley was ever arrested for his associations and the things he said was during World War II, you know, when the fascist was put in prison because he might be on the side of the fascists. But when it came to the rest of his time of his political activism and political career, he was only ever arrested for promoting violence. And that seems to be a relatively sensible law. But no, what does Channel 4 have to say? This law exists, it's just not being applied properly, please only apply it to white people. Absolutely unbelievable. Our media class is such an embarrassment. I just don't feel anything toward them anymore. They are basically just good for a content farm on my YouTube channel and for, you know, finding the odd things out when you read between the lines of the articles. And this one was very telling, though I didn't really have to read between the lines for them to explicitly say, I don't want this law applied to me. Anyway, that is everything I had for you today. In terms of streams, no regional variations today. I don't know why, tailed away or something. It will be returning next week, don't you worry. On Friday, I will be on the Wellington Project, talking about Wrestling with the Angel, a book by Enoch Powell, where we'll be going through a couple of chapters where he carries on talking about religious concepts and the Bible. Laughing at the Guardian will return next Saturday. It was supposed to be this week, but I've got a busy weekend. But with all that out of the way, that's everything I had for you today. So once again, thank you very much for watching, and until next time, goodbye.